welcome to the Forward Unto Dawn podcast, the show all about the fiction of Halo. I'm David, and I'm joined by usual co-host Dani.
Idly Hudley.
And this week we've got special guest Haruspis.
Hardly Hodley.
Stealing your bit, Dani. Haruspis has been on a couple episodes in the past.
Can't get rid of me.
Yeah. He just keeps on coming back like a bad penny.
You're just a friendly yo-yo.
But we've invited him back to talk about a little bit about one of the books we missed earlier this year, as well as a new release. And that's Troy Denning's Silent Storm and Oblivion, some of the latest Halo novels.
Can I get this out of the way? Silent Storm sounds like a really immature way to describe a fart. Like, so you expect like a little school kid to add a Silent Storm right there, you know?
Well, I'm never going to read that book the same way again.
And what follows that Silent Storm? Oblivion.
Oh God! I apologize for taking it into that direction so soon.
We're starting off on a low note. It's only going to go up from here, I promise.
Anyhow, so yeah, I guess we'll start off. So these are, I guess these are books 1 and 2 of a most likely trilogy. I don't think the third book has been confirmed, but I feel like it is likely.
It feels that way. Sort of like a standalone slow burner. Yeah, I can feel it.
Spoiler alert, if it's not 3 books, I'll be immensely disappointed because there's a lot that gets left out at the end of the second one. But these are all subtitled. I guess that's the first thing to talk about. These were all subtitled A Master Chief Story.
A Master Chief Story.
As part of the, I don't know what, 2018, we're going to pivot back to Master Chief movement.
Are they still trying to pivot back from the Halo 5 marketing?
I guess a little, because around the time we got Oblivion,
spell it out on the cover. Master Chief.
He looks different, and we're going to make
Okay.
fans upset for very little reason. But
that's Halo for you.
Yeah, and we're going to have Grimm write this big long thing about how it totally makes sense, and yeah, there's 5 million more permutations of Mark IV than you saw last time.
Poor Jeff just weeping in the office.
But yeah, this was announced, I think, alongside or roughly at the same time as Collateral Damage, which was another. This Master Chief is in this comic series, and coincidentally also took place early in the Covenant War. So after a fair amount of fiction with Halo Wars 2 and Halo Fractures and stuff like that going past Halo 5, Silent Storm, Oblivion, this more recent crop has been dipping back into the Human Covenant War.
Kind of a back to basics sort of approach.
Yeah, and I definitely think in some ways you could say these books are very much a back to basics approach to the series. It's early in the Covenant War, and that factors in a whole lot.
The bad guys are still the bad guys. That sort of thing. Yeah.
That neither side
Simpler
knows
times.
really anything about each other.
Yeah, and I think that's actually so. A lot of people have, I think, put Denning into the next Nyland territory, in that he definitely, his writing style sort of hits the same blend of military sci-fi that Nyland does.
Yeah, it's similar, but it's like there are some massive differences that kind of like rubs me up against that idea that he's sort of the next Nyland, because I think his sort of writing style is very different to Nyland's.
Yeah, and I think that's something that came up for me when because we just published a retrospective on the Fall of Reach's 18th anniversary, is that I feel like Nyland's Chief is at this point sort of the odd man out with everything else that we've seen of the characterization of Master Chief. And I think Denning's portrayal of the character sort of eases the transition for me between what you see of Chief in The Fall of Reach, and then that book skips most of the Covenant War to drop you in 2552, whereas this takes place more or less, I think it's only a few weeks after Chai Seti, where the early part of the Fall of Reach ends with the death of Sam and everyone getting their Mjolnir armor. The Spartans going out against the Covenant. So I appreciate that.
I also find that Nyland's a much more sort of thematically driven writer, is that he writes very much around a particular theme, which in his trilogy is the idea of lives spent versus lives wasted. Whereas with Denning's work, I would struggle to kind of pin things down to a particular theme.
Yeah, I think you can definitely say there are more motifs, but it's very much a plot-driven story. We'll get into that, starting with Silent Storm. So this is shortly after Chai Seti, as you mentioned. It's Master Chief and everybody. Basically, the plot is they start out trying to capture a Covenant ship. They fail, and then it leads to this big production for Operation Silent Storm, where basically they're going to go disrupt enemy lines and try and buy coal, time to regroup and for humanity to basically survive. And we get a bunch of characters we'd seen previously, including Preston Cole, who I don't think we'd ever seen besides Nyland's short story and Halo Genesis. He's been referred to, but I don't know if he's actually ever been a character.
Yeah, not that I recall.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that makes this feel like, hey, this is an early book, because he shows up. We get more of Halsey.
Of course.
We get some new military characters. We get Avery Johnson in...
Who's he?
I mean, a straightforward retcon, because Chief never acts like he met the guy before. But, and that leads to the whole question, like, could this not have been another character? But for the people who like Johnson, he's there. And I think he plays a decent role in providing something of, basically, I think Silent Storm, if in so much as there is a theme, it's really about like role models for Chief. Because this is a very different Chief than what we get. He's like, it starts out with him basically talking about how he's haunted by Sam's death. He know it wasn't really his fault. Like, he had to do what he had to, but he's taking those lessons to heart. Like, everyone's going on an EVA mission, and hey, this time they've all got thruster packs. They've got like patches in case they take damage, so they can all escape, exfiltrate, learning the lessons from that. And over the course of the book, the UNSC gets betrayed by an insurrectionist spy in the ranks, and it's also there where Chief, which is I appreciate it, because one of the things that doesn't get underlined as much, I think it's a little, that was something that was more Nyland's work and is less in the others, is that Chief is a child soldier who was raised with no one else but Spartans, basically. So in social situations, he's kind of like, he's not big on social cues. And in Silent Storm, he basically almost gets one pulled over on him because the insurrectionist guy seems chummy. And so that was a nice detail. And one thing I think both these books are really good at is bucking the trend of, I think especially with Nyland's work, it was really influential, and we got a whole genre for the first, I guess, chunk of Halo media. It was kind of like, all right, we're going to have humans, they're on their back foot, there's going to be a foreman or a MacGuffin, they're going to beat the Covenant in like a victory, isolated victory that doesn't necessarily change the status quo of the war, because we got to dance around the games. And
we've had one or two too many of those kinds of stories.
Yeah, and so it's great that Silent Storm lets the humans just straight up lose at times, and come away with victories that feel a lot more skin of teeth and unearned or earned. And they also,
while having those Forerunner elements very much on the periphery, they're not part of the main plot, and I think that's a very welcome change.
Yeah, they actually, if you kind of miss it at one point, when they go to run this Operation Silent Storm, and they're boarding, they land on this planet to board grav lifts up to the Forerunner Covenant ships they're going to destroy. They are on a Forerunner planet, and they kind of obliquely mention it, but it's something that they basically skip over, that it's only a huge deal to the Covenant because, holy crap, these guys landed on the holy planet and destroyed a whole bunch of it. It's not really something that plays a role. There's no Forerunner tech that is important and the humans have to destroy, because otherwise the Covenant would get it.
And then Oblivion goes into much more interesting areas with, but we'll get to that, of course.
Yeah. So overall, I guess what was your feelings about Silent Storm?
So I might be a bit unpopular here because I was a bit kind of on the edge with it. I didn't dislike it. I enjoyed it, but it's not kind of the flavor of Halo that I gravitate towards. I like my weirder kind of Halo stories, like my Broken Circles, my Halo Cryptums and Primordiums, that sort of thing. So the return to sort of traditional military sci-fi was not something that is like that appeals to me as much anymore as it did back in Nyland's days. But at the same time, it was a very well told story. I was gripped throughout it, right up to the end, and I still enjoyed it.
Dani?
To be honest, I thought it was very, very plainly told. There was never a surprise, and that took out a lot of the pacing for me. Really, it really affected my want to read through it, because it was like, I know how this is going to end. I know where the stakes are going to be at the exact end. Where's the anything? Where's the page turning feel? You know what I mean?
Well, and that's definitely a problem with doing prequel novels at this point, especially with the Chief, is that we know they can't really kill. At this point, they've pretty much run out of expendable Spartans. So you can't even really even introduce. You can't even introduce Gary 229 and kill him off. And the Master Chief is obviously not expendable. So it's tough, I think, for Denning or anyone else to play around in that space, because we know Johnson's going to survive. We know Chief's going to survive. We know Blue Team is all going to be fine.
If only 343 had gotten together and made, I don't know, a couple of games about expanding the amount of Spartans in the universe so that they could play more freely and not be restricted. If only someone had that sort of forethought.
If only there was another team of Spartans out there.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, maybe one day.
But no, I do appreciate that this is also kind of a new, a good novel for new people to jump into. Because we're so many novels along now.
It's safe. If you want to throw a Halo novel at someone, it's a really safe bet. You can't really go wrong with it. It delivers the whole Halo experience in a good, satisfying story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard to criticize it. It's not bad. It's really not bad at all. It's just not great.
In some ways, it definitely is trying to sort of be the Fall of Reach 2, in that the Fall of Reach, as we talked about in our retrospective, which we'll link, it suffers a little from being the first book that started an expanded universe. So there's like some weird stuff in it that does not fit with the Halo universe now. Whereas this is hey, we're going to introduce Chief, the Spartans, Covenant, UNSC, insurrectionists, Oni being jerks. But it's in a much more modern context.
Well, here's a question, and considering Silent Storm and Oblivion, right? Do you feel that they're under pressure now? They drop in the references. They're suffering from the whole universe full of possibility, and all the same faces keep popping up again and again. And I kind of get that now as a longer term fan reading through these books. It's like, here we go. Here's the checklist. There we go. Another one. Double. You know what I mean? It's
one does wonder.
Yeah.
how many times
They've got a long way to go before
Yeah.
they hit Star Wars level of everyone is related to everyone else and stuff. So that's the low bar I'm setting.
But at this point, I just get that vibe. It's probably because it's set in the past. It's set with things and people we already know, teams we're already familiar with. You know what I mean? So I did get that sort of bound back from it, if you know what I mean, rather than meeting new characters all the time. It was more of...
That's why I tend to prefer Denning's stories with Vita Lopez and the Ferrets, because you've got that wonderful mix there of new and old characters sort of playing off each other.
Yeah. Well, and also I think that one of the things that Denning does pretty well, but it's just always a situation, is when you have all a blue team, like giving them all time to shine is hard, whereas books where there's single Spartans, it's a lot easier.
Oblivion did that really well.
Yeah, Oblivion I think is probably the best example of giving everyone in blue team stuff to do in a while, and we'll get into that, but in general it's tough.
Is it bad that I actually don't want these books to exist? No, I mean that in a nice way, right? Because I mean that in a nice way. Right, I mean that in a nice way because the stories they're trying to tell about Master Chief, the Master Chief stories, which we want, you know, we're Halo fans, we want more Master Chief, hell yeah. But the thing is now, right? We know that the TV show is going to cover the same sort of pre-game territory. You know what I mean? It's going to cover and going to provide a lot of opportunities for telling stories about the Chief going on these missions. And I want to see that. I want to see that in the most visual way possible. And I think the TV show hopefully will tread on those sort of territories that these books kind of cover right now. You can have an up the stakes, amazing, like proper season length. You can flesh out all these stories and characters, and not have to feel rush it, or maybe it hangs on a second book or a third book. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I want these stories. I just think we now have an alternative medium for the first time in the franchise. We know there's a show coming which has all the nice money behind it and all the talent behind it. So why not want that shift to happen there as well?
Yeah, I definitely get that perspective.
Well, live action in Halo has a somewhat spotty record, so I can see wanting it to be in the books versus live action. I guess we'll see.
I will vehemently defend it.
You and defend Nightfall and Broken Circle. We'll have you back on another episode where we can just look at you and say, "How dare you, sir?" And you can do your best and let the fans decide.
I have hope, honestly. I have hope for the TV aspect of it, because modern TV is where it is. You can't slouch. You cannot slouch. Look what happened to Supergirl with that clip they put out to promote their big get-together show, and everyone just dunked on it because the effects look like poo. You know what I mean? So if you don't bring the visuals these days, especially to a new show like Halo's like expectations on them, just a little bit expectations, you know?
Yeah.
So people won't settle for a half-assed, even Forward on the Dawn, that show. I love that little experiment they did, but that quality wouldn't even be good enough for network TV. You know what I mean? So they're going to up their game visually. They're going to up everything. So I have confidence that money works. Unfortunately.
I will see. All right, well, I guess I am more positive on Silent Storm than you guys, which surprises
There we go,
me.
variety of opinion.
I am not negative on it, okay? Just for the record, I am not negative on it.
Now, I do have to be the negative things, because the great things about both these books, I think that we haven't gotten, despite being prequels and stuff, that we haven't gotten before, is that they really do focus on how alien the Covenant and humans are to each other at this stage in the game. So I really appreciate that. The downside of that, I think, for me, was that they have the Chief name drones and elites like the first time he encounters them, and that just bothered me, sort of going into the small universe stuff. And then also there was this Silent Storm. Basically, on one hand, I had never really considered it, but it is entirely true that despite being a super augmented super soldier, the 15-year-old Chief probably still looks like a kid.
Yeah.
And it seems like it would be hard to hide the fact that he's a child soldier at that stage. However, the fact that everyone finds out about it in this book bothered me a little, which it's just one of those quibbles.
In fairness, a lot of them end up dead.
This is true. And I guess in some ways, the ODSTs knowing about the chief ties in with previously established facts in the Halo universe, so I can't complain too much. Speaking of the Flood, Silva goes into that whole thing.
I really like how sort of the approach to these books, it goes back to the back of the box of Halo 1, where it says, you are the master of any weapon, the pilot of any vehicle, and you really get a sense that this is what really makes the Spartan special.
Mm-hmm. And in some ways, there's a lot of stuff here that we haven't gotten in terms of like the Chief's onboard computer in these books, like reacting to his thoughts, is something we've never really dealt with in this way. And I kind of, at some point, they use it for little comedic beats where Chief's like wondering, like, can I do this? And the computer's like, nope. Before he really has even chance to think about it. So that was a nice touch too. But I guess we can dive into Oblivion, which takes place just another few weeks after the events of Silent Storm. So humanity's succeeded in dealing a serious blow to the Covenant, but the Covenant are huge, and they just come back and start smashing stuff up. And so it opens with, which, having just read this book like a week ago, I cannot believe that I forgot this entire opening section of the book, because the rest of this book is so, especially for a Halo novel, takes place in such a confined amount of time and space that I entirely forgot there was this whole opening on another planet entirely.
About 3 chapters.
Yeah, it's for a good long time on I forget what planet, Mesra or something like that. But it's like we were talking about. It's another example of, hey, the UNSC just lose. There's not really any we bought time for humanity kind of thing. They just lose. The Spartans are deployed to this planet, which is being besieged by the Covenant, probably for the mining deposits. So the UNSC are doing this delaying action, trying to destroy all the mines, deprive the Covenant. And the chief is working with the local militia, who are drugged out and sleep deprived and pretty suicidal. And so in the end, they don't blow this bridge that they're supposed to. The chief runs over to like try and blow it himself, but he's too late, and Oni pulls him out. And this had a lot of good stuff in it. You have the Spartans just running around with Gauss turrets, which I found fun and a nice throwback to like Halo 3. The Covenant have these bridging vehicles that are described that I don't think we've ever heard about before. And you get a lot of stuff with just chief and artillery barrages and like dealing with the Covenant that we don't normally deal with in action scenes in books. So I like this whole section. And it ends, of course, with Oni being terrible people and using their fellow like engineers' attempt to escape as their cover for escaping, because they know they'll get shot down instead of the Prowler. And
that ruthless calculus at play.
Yeah. Which, that's Oni for you. Biggest bastards in the business. And so then after this section, which I think it's mostly the main impact, I think, besides showing you that, humanity's still not doing so great, is it's really a personal thing for Chief, in that he kind of blames himself for the mission going bad because he tried to be accommodating and compromise with the militia members, and that just ended up getting everyone killed. And so it's a nice little character bit for him. So they're exfiltrated on the Prowler Night Watch under the commander of Amanda Petrov, who's going to be a main character here. And we pretty quickly get set up how things are going to go, because on Netherop, the planet from Silent Storm, there's supposedly a downed Covenant ship, and everyone says this is totally a trap, but we can't not go after it, because getting a huge treasure trove of Covenant technology is such a big freaking deal.
And that's great. Like, the stakes are about getting one ship. I think that really differentiates it from a lot of other Halo stories right off the bat.
Yeah, and I in both of these, despite being wrapped up in, well, this is the end of humanity if you don't do this, the stakes are, I would say, pretty low. Or I wouldn't say low, but small scale.
The scale is quite
Yeah.
small, yeah.
And I think that is definitely a benefit for both of these books.
Definitely. I think one of my main issues with reading some of the battles in Denning's books is that I have a real difficulty picturing the setting, because a lot of the action is described in meticulous detail, what the characters are doing in it, but I just can't imagine some of the environments that come up. And that's probably been my main struggle with that. I struggle to do that more than anyone struggles reading Primordial.
I can see that. He definitely, I think, I appreciate that he puts effort, especially when we get onto Netherop, of trying to make it weirdly alien, even though a lot of it doesn't apply, because it's when we finally land on this planet. So the plan basically goes terribly wrong, and Chief and the Spartans of Blue Team and everyone get shot down. And so then you've got everyone on this planet, which is well nigh inhospitable. It's super hot. You could probably play a drinking game where they mention heat shimmering and not being able to see anything and be dead by alcohol poisoning before the end. But it's super hot. There's these weird crystalline plants that shatter when you touch them. And other carnivorous ones. So there's lots of weird stuff that they kind of bring up to embellish the planet, and I do think they do a good job.
Absolutely,
of giving it an alien feel. When a lot of the planets we go to, you can mentally sub in the Pacific Northwest, and you're not far off.
It was around the time that we got to this sort of bit in the story that I was like, okay, I'm jiving with this a lot more than I was Silent Storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we also have the other side of things, the Covenant perspective. And in the last book, we had Nizat. I forget his last name because I never remember. They're super long, so I just call him Nizat the entire time. Kavrosi or something like that. This is the downside of reading the books, is that I don't know how to pronounce stuff.
Kavaracy, I think.
All right, let's go with that. But I'm not going to say it again anyhow. So Nizat.
I'll say it for you.
So Nizat is in a bit of a pickle because he totally screwed up. And so we get a really cool, I think this was one of my favorite parts of the book, part where he basically goes back to High Charity to answer for getting a bunch of ships blown up. And he's already got a plan for what they're going to do. He thinks that Oni is the big problem here, that the war against the humans would be going great without Oni. So his plan is to plant trackers on them that will lead them back to Earth or wherever they are hiding out. And we get this whole great scene where at first the prophets are kind of like, oh yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. Why do you need this many trackers, though? Because didn't you already have one? He's like, oh, yeah, that was blown up. And he sort of loses, he basically just loses the support of everyone. And they say, nope, your plan to do this is not going to work out. And so I think this is the first time we get the mention of these beacons. I don't recall ever hearing about them before. And I guess we get a reason for why we never hear about these beacons, because they're special Forerunner items that they only have a certain number of.
3.
It's not convenient. It's not convenient.
I mean, it's a decent reason. And one of the great things about it is they throw in this little that could be nothing, or 10 years in the future we'll have a book about this. But one of the beacons was lost with an entire Covenant fleet somewhere
in the galactic core.
Yeah, in the galactic core, and they can't reach it, which was a cool little thing. And maybe that will not matter at all. or maybe it will. You don't know. Could be like the Sharkoi. Just wait the better part of 15 years until you find out.
Or maybe
what
it's the
heck it
next
is.
book.
No, that's true. That could also be it. We don't know.
I used to complain something about Guilty Spark, but that one's run its course at this point, unfortunately.
Well, you can't complain now. That complaint has been removed.
I know. I'm complaining that I can't complain.
And we also get a nice thing, which I think we had heard about this before, that there's a room in High Charity where they basically take pieces of the planets they've glassed and decorate it. I think we'd heard about that before, but this gives you a full little explanation of it, and it sounds really cool. And at this point, Nizat goes rogue, kills some dudes, and basically decides that he's going to run this entire mission himself. He's going to plant the beacons, find Oni, and so this is where we learn that basically from the get-go, everyone knows that the crashed Covenant ship is totally a trap. But we know everyone's motives going into it. And so that's the tension that the rest of the book leaves, is who's going to succeed. And the spoiler is kind of no one. So on the planet, my notes for this entire middle section of the book is someone decided we needed a sequel to Primordium's walking scenes, and by God, did we get it. So I guess you were happy about that.
It was my favorite part. I love this part of the book. Yeah, as soon as the kids are introduced and we're sort of going around that, I was like, you know what, this is on par with some of my favorite of Denning's stuff.
Yeah, and I will give him points. It is definitely a weird turn I did not expect, because we got the setup. You think you know sort of how it's going to go. It's kind of got a I think the podcast of all people made a Pitch Black reference, which I think fits, because you land on Netherop and it's this terrible place, and the Spartans are more or less fine because they've got climate controlled suits, but everyone else is gonna drop
having a bad day.
Yeah, like flies from heat stroke. And I think most of the marine deaths in this book come from, like, they just mentioned casually, like, oh yeah, we lost another 5 guys at this point and stuff.
And so, same on the Covenant side as well.
Yeah, which is a nice. It's kind of like more true to life to real world combat, where you're more likely going to die from something else than actual combat. But it also makes the stakes, like it's this 32-hour day or something like that, and it's a race against time, especially because the first part of this, there's the Prowler that they're going to have to blow up since it's crashed, and it's either going to blow up when someone gets on it or when Petrov dies, because she's keyed it to her. So they kind of have to figure out what is the actual distance we can get away with this nuke without killing everyone. And it's at this point that Fred sees spider walkers and human children, and a really long time where no one believes Fred and thinks he's got heat stroke, which kind of annoyed me, in that it got me for a while. I was like, oh, that's kind of goofy that they don't really trust Fred. And then it stopped me. I'm like, wait, doesn't everyone have a camera on their suit?
Yeah.
Like, if Jenkins had a camera, like, why can't we just cue up the tape? But I guess no one was thinking really well in the heat. But it leads to, this walkabout with the kids, the cast-offs. And after some scenes where they basically are setting a trap for the Spartans, because, I mean, they can't tell a Spartan from an alien to them, which is a nice callback to some of the earlier Halo media and how inhuman the Spartans seem to regular people. We learn their story, which is a sad one, that they're the descendants of pirates who were deliberately marooned on Netherop.
So they're wait, they're inbred pirate babies then?
I mean, if you wanted to call it that, yes, they are inbred pirate babies. And I get that, leaving a bunch of horny teenagers on a planet alone is going to produce predictable results, but like they mention at one point, one of the main cast-offs we spend time with. Like, they can't really tell how old they are because they're like so weirdly malnourished, and she's had like 6 kids and only 2 survived.
That was Rosette, yeah.
Yeah, and it's
One
like,
of the
dang,
ones.
it's
horrific. It's almost cosmic horror.
yeah, it's one of those things where like this is a kind of terrible situation we don't often get in Halo, and throughout the book they're playing with the sense of like, hey man, we could get stranded here, and that would be terrible. And that ties into the end. And the cast-offs have mostly survived because they found an ancient alien city that is not Covenant and not Forerunner.
And not ancient human.
The galaxy is filled with all these MacGuffins just literally on your doorstep. Just open your eyes, guys. Ancient alien cities for little kids? Yeah, why not?
Which we don't actually go to. But the ancient alien city is referenced. Instead, we mostly spend time with their weirdly steampunk like spider walkers. The description really did not give this impression, but the mental image was a scaled down version of the giant spider machine from the bad remake of Wild Wild West starring Will Smith.
See, the real secret is they don't want to spoil a Halo Infinite vehicle reveal too early.
They're going to give you coal-fired spider walkers. Yeah, that
sounds about right. Yeah,
that was the extra bit where it's run by coal. Well, it's run off batteries from coal, and it's got microwave weapons. Like, these are such weird alien
coal batteries. I want to see a coal battery, actually.
Yeah, it was definitely not where I was expecting this book to go at all, and they went there.
This was where I was really like, I'm really into this, because this is so different and so strange and so like un-Halo in such a divergence from what you traditionally think of a Halo story.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased with it.
And so it sets up this thing where they've got to team up with the cast-offs because they've got the spider walkers to make it. Even though they have like Blue Team doing something like sprinting for 3 hours straight and like pretty crazy stuff, and they're like checking their weapons while they're sprinting and things like that, but they're not going to make it to the Covenant ship, which is they call it the Lucky Break. They're not going to make it to it in time, and the Petrov and the rest of the Marines are going to die. So they make an alliance with the cast-offs, and this leads to
some really good scenes.
Yeah,
with like Kelly and Linda especially, and individually with the cast-offs.
Yeah, because roughly at this point, basically they start splitting everyone up, and Fred and Chief go together, and then Kelly and Linda have their own sequences, basically with the cast-offs. And I did appreciate, because we don't get, I guess, aside from Florida to Dawn, which gets nicely name dropped early on in this book. We mentioned that they had to go to Corbulo, but we don't really get to see Chief with kids, or any of them with kids, and it's like really you expect like Kelly or Linda is kind of interested in killing them at this first possible chance.
I was thinking like, yeah, that's probably what those drill instructors on Reach were thinking about you, right?
Yeah, back in the day, like, oh my god. And Chief actually shows that he has some basic parenting instincts, like, because he's like, guys, let's like actually like think about this. Or later on, they're like, hey, maybe don't take the kids through the like gore of the recent battle.
That's what I always thought of the Chief, is that he parents a lot more than he is a leader, and I like seeing that really come out in his character.
Yeah, and they actually have her say, hey, maybe you'd make a good dad, and Chief's like, what? So wacky spin-off sitcom option down the road. Chief has to parent like 2 kids or whatever. 3.5 Spartans. So yeah, it's they end up basically promising. There's a nice bit where they promise to get the cast-offs to work with them. They promise them to the cast-off state-of-the-art ship to the UNSC, something that's like super old and irrelevant, and then that they'll get a ship and get to go to whatever planet they want. And Chief's like, sure. And I think the nice thing about this whole thing is that, and they don't technically mention it, but it ties in a little bit with the events of Halo Collateral Damage, is that Chief is willing to work with insurrectionists, basically, or rebels, but he's also willing to be honorable with them, and that through the rest of this book, he's actually trying to do his mission, but he's also trying to keep the cast-offs alive and honor their deal. Which is, it's a nice character.
You know him when he makes a promise.
Oh, God.
The
Master Chief is Master Chief. Let's get on with it. He's always going to be Master Chief.
Yeah, and so then we get to the part of the book, after a lot of walking, we get to the battle part, because Nizat arrives in the system, and he basically rockets down to the planet, and then the Covenant, the Silent Shadow, which I like. Chief thinks that these red armored elites are like a special Spartan kill team, when actually they're their own thing. But the Silent Shadow is sent to go after Nizat, and so there's this interesting thing with, all right, everyone's down here and they're all moving around. What I found a bit perplexing, though, is that this section of the book changes perspectives a lot, and I was left not actually knowing what the hell was going on sometimes, because they mention like groups of humans, and I'm not sure which group of humans there are, because there's 3 groups of humans. It got a little confusing for me.
It doesn't really pull out to see the larger picture, does it? It's very ingrained in the perspective of who
It's in the feet.
Yeah, and I think to a degree that's intended, because it's setting up this Looney Tunes kind of thing where like they're gonna chase after, they realize, oh wait, like there are Spartans here, we can't have Spartans get aboard the ship because maybe they could actually take it over. So the lucky break that everyone knew was a trap launches off. And they're like, all right, well, we got to plant these beacons somewhere else. So there's this weird setup where the Covenant are alternatively attacking and retreating, and the humans are not sure why. And it goes into this thing where either side is like, I don't understand what these guys are doing. It makes no sense. And
so basically, it's the Scooby-Doo corridor.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, and I appreciated that part of it, even though I was left confused, because at one point, they rescue Petrov and stuff because they commandeer some Covenant Umbros, which confused me for a while, as I was like, these sound like shadows from Halo 2, and I believe they're the same thing, just they only refer to them as Umbros in this.
Yeah, I was getting like shadows, wraiths. I was picturing some weird kind of hybrid between them.
Yeah, we also get, in terms of weird new stuff, we get the super tuning fork. We get a super spirit dropship, which just has a 3rd prong, which I found random and delightful, mostly just so it can drop.
We have to see that. I have to see Pitchforks fall from the sky. We have to see it.
Just flying through, mostly so they can drop off the 2 Umbras. But I like the perspective, and I think actually at some point we get a mention of pour one out for the often forgotten specters from Halo 2.
Oh yes,
like everyone forgot about them.
Oh yeah.
So it's
nice wee call, but
yeah, requiem for forgotten Halo vehicles in times past. I don't think
they still exist for someone.
Yeah, for someone. They'll probably never appear again, but there's the chance. But yeah, so there's the Petrov and the humans, and Petrov makes it pretty clear, because they just don't have enough room for everyone, that like, yeah, Chief, it's nice what you promised, but we're totally going to leave those kids behind at the first opportunity. And Chief's like, oh, well, we shouldn't do that. And she's like, I don't care. And like, it's trying to spin it to the kids in like this, hey, you guys really like your home, right? It's pretty dangerous out there. You don't want to go into space. It's really terrible.
Space does have aliens.
And the kids are having none of it.
Yeah, it's a nice little like oily adult kind of thing, and how the kids deal with it is a lot of fun. And that pays off. And so
Oh, it does. It absolutely does.
yeah, and so what ends up happening is that like Nizat, they end up clashing with the Spartans, and they end up managing to like. It's kind of funny. They've got like the guy. They're like, all right, we're gonna put these beacons in something that the humans will want. There's like some Covenant tech, and so they throw it into these like big heavy shields that some of the Rangers are on, and like, all right, basically, like go and suicide into them, but try and not make it look too obvious what you're doing. And like, this is for like the greater good, right? It's like, oh yeah, totally. You're going to be like famous. It's going to be great. It's all going to be worth it. Just go on and do that. And then things switch up and they're like, all right, well, now we can't just like leave it for them to find it. We have to stick it into something of theirs. And so they end up putting it into a keypad and like kind of like running at them and then retreating once they've planted it and confusing the Spartans even more.
Yeah, this was another really horrific part. It's just like they're getting cut down like
yeah, you almost I felt pretty bad for Nizat because he gets hosed at pretty much every opportunity.
I felt more bad for his men than him himself because it was his horrible plan, and they're all dying for this awful cause.
He's got a really good I think relationship with his subordinate in this. Tam Lakosi is his subordinate, and they get a really good relationship where like Nizat's not a total. I would say he's excessively optimistic, but he's not a total idiot. He's got his plan, and Lakosi kind of pushes back on sometimes, but they'll let each other like figure out their mind space, and it's much more collaborative than we usually see elites being in that situation.
How dare you question me?
Yeah, that kind of thing, and they do a good job of explaining like the politics of it too, and how it works. But not that it does them a good bit here, because they end up having technically succeeded. They're cut off from their fleet in orbit, and the kill teams arrive. And every time, I appreciate Nizat's like the eternal optimist, because every time something goes even worse, he's like, well, no, this is the perfect opportunity. Because
when he's saying like, the Spartans are our salvation.
Yeah, the Spartans are our salvation because they'll kill the Covenant that are trying to kill us. And then even that doesn't really work because like the last of Nizat's men are surrounded and they're going to get pinned down and stuff. But the time for extraction has come. And Chief's like, all right, well, I have no time to deal with whatever this is, so I've just got to leave. And they bug out, taking the compad and the corpse of the elite with the shield.
With the mega shield.
Yeah.
The overshield. Which
I wondered what that actually looked like. I don't think
part of me was like imagining the actual power up, the cube in Halo 1 and Halo 2.
Yeah, I always wondered what the deal with those cubes were. Like, are they actually like, because you just like shatter them and somehow you get shields? Like, it was not clear exactly how those things work. Like were they actually?
Nom, nom, nom.
Yeah, they're very like Super Mario kind of thing for like equipment. But I miss them. I do miss them. Better than those stupid colored balls in Halo 3. But I digress. And basically, that's the main book. Just kind of ends there, with more failures and retreats all around. And they basically exfil out. There's a whole hearing when they get back.
Because Petrov was left behind.
Yeah, so they're aboard Cole's ship, the Everest, and there's this whole hearing because Petrov has been left behind, and basically the chief covers for them and says, like, I guess it makes total sense that she told these kids that she was going to stay behind and make a forward base. Like, that makes sense to me. And they agree to... honestly, I found it kind of unlikely, but I guess the only flip side I can see to justify this is that Cole is kind of getting tired of his whole job anyhow, and he probably sort of defects to the insurrection kind of at some point anyhow. So maybe that was just his like thing. So he lets Roselle and the other cast-offs get their ship and go where they want, which is Gao. Which is a nice callback to Denning's Last Light and Retribution. Which is a insurrection hotbed, but they swear that they won't reveal anything about the Spartans, which is another time where I'm like, no, like they would have just killed those kids. I mean, this is the UNSC. They're not like a great military organization, but I guess this time they get out because killed off enough kids already in this book. But they get their sharp fin. They go to Gao. Basically, they say they let him go because Master Chief says that we can trust them.
It's interesting. They never definitively answer whether Petrov voluntarily stayed behind or whether there was something more underhanded going on there.
Yeah, and so the final scene is that Nizat and his remaining, I don't even know how many, he's got his Lakosi or whatever, and he's got like 2 other guys basically left out of all the people. And they were a fate worse than death, I guess. Marooned for all eternity at the center of a dead planet, buried alive. On Netherop.
They'll soon have inbred elite pirate babies, so don't worry.
Yeah, so the Covenant decided just to mine the crap out of the planet so that he can't get off instead of just killing him outright, which is, I guess, a little atypical for the Covenant, but they're all for torturous deaths, so I guess it makes sense. And they find Petrov on the planet and are really debating whether or not they want to eat her or not.
Just a normal day, you know?
Yeah, you just gotta eat the humans you got.
If you're hungry, come on,
yeah.
If you're hungry, you would.
But she's got a gun.
Yeah, she's got a gun, and this was the other part I was unclear. They are not sure if, because she's like roasting these plant pads, and they're like, well, she's roasting way more than she can eat or carry, so like she must have someone else. And it was totally unclear to me whether, because they didn't say anything during the hearing, whether or not Petrov actually was left alone, or she actually did have people.
Because there were multiple spaces left on the Pelican, weren't there? When they leave.
I don't think there's room, but I feel like, see, that's it was just like not clear to me at all what I was supposed to. It's because if she was alone, then the only reason she'd be roasting all that stuff is like because she knew there were elites there, and she was like trying to maybe barter her survival. I was not entirely certain what I was supposed to think about with that final section. But Nizat, ever the optimist, is like, no, like this is the god's gift, and we'll just wait and see, and everything will work out somehow. So it shows that though characters have grown and changed in this book, Nizat definitely hasn't.
He is delightfully static, and I do enjoy that. But I don't normally enjoy static characters, but he is.
Yeah,
because he's so different. I do like it.
And then the book ends, and that's where I really feel like there should be a trilogy here, because if there's not, there's a whole bunch of loose ends in this book left, which kind of felt like some of them should have been filled.
I felt like it was a less abrupt ending than Silent Storm's. I thought Silent Storm, like at the very end, like really skipped past a lot to
end,
come to a close. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe this one felt more abrupt to me because once, like, I totally forgot about the whole section on Mesra. Like, once he gets to the section on Netherop, it just goes and goes and goes, and it's like in the span of basically a day, it's a really breakneck pace.
That was something that shocked me. Yeah, I was just like, oh, that was a really quick, like, in terms of the time scale, the timeline of this story. It doesn't happen over a very long time.
Yeah, so I think that made it feel more abrupt to me, because we've been going at this crazy pace for the entire book, and then it's just like, all right, we're done. Hit page limit. I'm going home. So in that respect, I think I definitely, of these two, and actually I had similar thoughts with Battleborn and Meridian Divide, which we'll talk about in another episode. I felt like the first book in these series, both of those series, was stronger than the second. But since you love walking around and licking frogs, I'm assuming you liked Oblivion more.
Yes, this was much closer to my particular sensibilities with Halo.
It's got weird stuff.
It's got weird stuff. It's got walking. I love it.
I mean, that's fair. That's
I'm just thankful it didn't have rock licking.
Oh, sorry. All right.
Or squirty poo. So
it
had that going
licking
for it.
rocks. I'm sorry. I'm not frogs. I'm thinking of like The Simpsons there. You're right.
I did appreciate how it split up Blue Team, because I think Blue Team is at their least interesting when they're together, but when they're with different characters who they can bounce off more, as we see in Denning's other books, they're way more interesting to read.
I mean, that's one of those things that's hard for me, because I guess because I've never found Blue Team the most interesting part of the Halo universe, I cannot. Like, I know Linda's the sniper and Kelly's the fast one and Fred's Fred, but in terms of their actual personalities, like when people like talk about like, oh, like I saw some people like, I don't know if Kelly felt like she was really written like Linda or vice versa, and I was like, I cannot really tell the difference. And maybe it's just because especially Kelly and Linda are usually the least served on these books, and this is it's probably their biggest outing. Well, Linda got her comic
book. We've only got a Linda comic this year.
Yeah. So
and
they're
that's the first solo media we've had with her.
Yeah, meanwhile, Fred's been tearing it up, running around. I do like but that's a nice, actually, Denning does a nice contrast here that Fred is in some ways way more laid back in these books than he is in Last Light and Retribution. So I think he does a good job with Chief and with Fred, especially with selling it that these are like 16, 17-year-olds. These are teenagers who are like obviously super soldiers and smart and wise and stuff, but they're still teens. They've only been in battle for a few years, and making a good transition. You can see how those characters transition into the more modern versions.
Definitely. I mean, Linda has some great stuff where she's talking about, she's got some deep insights into life, where she's talking to one of the car stops, and I was like, oh, this is really good.
She was going pretty zen, which again was something I like.
Yeah.
Has she ever done this before? But like, okay.
Yeah, that was one of the major things about her character that was only really mentioned in Nyland's books, where she has the Zen meditation and stuff that she does. So
see,
that actually lined up really quite nicely.
All right, there you go. I had totally forgotten, but I mean, I'm just not great at distinguishing. Like, it took until the Thursday War before I could tell anyone in Kilo 5 apart. That's not my strong suit when it comes to this stuff. All right, Dani. Silent Storm, Oblivion. Pick.
Like, which one's better?
Yeah, which to you?
He's gonna say neither.
Neither. I don't think they should exist.
That does bias my opinion a wee bit, but I don't think they're that satisfying enough for me to recommend either of them. I mean, they're good books. They're strong as each other, to be honest. I didn't think like the Oblivion made great strides. It was just more of the same quality, more of the same expectations being met. Tick boxes felt being ticked. So if you liked Silent Storm, dive the hell right in. Like, why would you stop?
I mean, the plus side, I think, is I would be more bothered by this kind of novel if it weren't for the fact that we were getting a whole bunch of different stuff. Like it's
Yeah,
not
if
it's
this
not
was the only
2006
thing on
anymore.
the
Like we've
range,
got
yeah.
a young adult series. We've got all these other
Mm.
books. Like we're actually exploring like stuff in the civilian universe. Wow, there are civilians in Halo.
Yes.
So I appreciate, while the Nylandian military sci-fi is not my cup of tea. It clearly is for some people, and they get a book they can enjoy, and we'll probably be getting back to weird walking and rock licking and stuff before you know it.
Oh boy.
All right. Any last words to say?
A scene just suddenly came to mind again, which I really enjoyed. And it's some of the more comical dialogue where the chief says to Fred, like, Fred, can you, like, give them a shout, distract them? And then Fred yells at them, like, nice mountain runners you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to them.
I mean, there is the whole little section there where all the other Spartans are like vaguely like, yeah, like we could totally kill you right now. Wouldn't that be bad? Which was
Actually, I was looking online on the Waypoint forums, seeing what people were saying about the book,
Mhm.
and there's one thing that was brought up, which I thought was kind of funny. Was a reminder. It wasn't a new piece of information. It was just a reminder, from just a throwaway sentence in the book, and it was about the elites, and their hatchery and the fact that they have eggs.
Oh yeah.
And I'd completely forgotten about that myself, and now I just can't stop thinking about that.
Where does that egg go?
I don't want to mentally image. Oh god. I don't want to mentally picture an elite laying an egg.
They'll just start roasting them over the fire with Petrov.
And are we going to like stumble upon an elite hatchery one day? Just like a little preschool and stuff? Like, oh no.
That's actually the opening mission of Halo Infinite.
Yeah, you just bust into a keep and just run to the hatchery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go stomping. Yeah, that sounds like a good way of establishing your dominance on the battlefield.
Lay an egg. Actually, another little fun scene. We're talking about little drips and drabs. I appreciated that Kelly gets called immediately on her being Chief's favorite.
Yes.
She's like, "What? No, that's not true." I mean, wait, what? It's like, it's obvious, duh. Like
the ship material, I think, was particularly strong in this book.
Yeah, it was fun to see. And I the one thing I really like, the cast-offs I found incredibly annoying to a certain degree, but I mean they're like teenagers, so yeah, like that's how I realized I was getting old, and I was like just looking at all these protagonists in the books I used to love reading. I'm like, oh my god, stop whining, you idiot. And now I'm like, well, actually, the adults make a very good point. But it's fun just because they are. Anytime when there's not a purely military obstacle for the Spartans, I think it's fun because obviously we know they can blow the heck out of a bunch of elites, but dealing with random pirate inbred kids is tough. And that's a lesson we can all learn.
And how many other Halo books can you say that has been something you've got to contend with?
All right. Well, anything else?
I loved it. You know, it's still not entirely there with like my favorites, but I very much preferred it to Silent Storm. And it's definitely a book that I would read again.
If you're a new Halo fan, it's a series. The two books are good entry points, just for a good Halo story. Because sometimes you just want to have a good Halo story, and both those books, including Oblivion, do deliver that.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm hopeful that we do get a third book. It wraps up some of this stuff, and get a nice end.
Ferret's book as well.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. I mean, at this point, I feel like Denning is the most prolific, quote unquote, new era of Halo author. And I think people seem to like him, so I think he's gonna keep sticking around and doing stuff.
Yeah, I hope so.
He's on his way to have written the most books.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he has more luck with Halo than he had with Star Wars. He came in towards the tail end of the high point of the EU post New Jedi Order stuff, and it went into a brick wall whenever the whole Disney stuff went. You know, poor guy.
Yeah, that's something.
He had some great books.
I've never
some
actually
really awesome books, so.
read any. I haven't read like Travis or Denning or anyone else's like other EU novels. I should do that at some point. Well, that's right. I lie. I actually got turned on to Peter David from his Star Trek stuff, which is why I was super disappointed by his book. But
I could probably nudge you in the direction of some of the better Star Wars novels rather than the worst. I've read most of them. So.
Okay. Well, I'll have to take you up on that sometime. All right. Well, thank you, Haruspis, for joining us.
Pleasure, as always.
Much appreciated.
What have you been doing? What do you want to plug?
Next week, or this week rather, I've got an article coming out. It's a Halo 4 one, of course.
What a shocker.
For its birthday. I know, right? And then in December, I believe, I'll be shooting out it's currently about 7,000 words long, a full history of the Prometheans from Halo Chronicles to present.
Oh, so the development of them, you mean?
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, that sounds cool. And we'll put links to Haruspis' blog in our show notes. You can find that at forwarduntodon.com/FUDcast. Wait, I have to check how many episodes have we actually done. This is 32 or 33. Oh, too many? Are you kidding? We've done like
not enough.
You want to see? All right, there's the new Halo podcast on the block is Finish the Fight, and they started in April. And they are up to 16 episodes. So we're going to get lapped again pretty quickly. But anyway.
Quality, not
yeah,
quantity.
So at FUDcast, forwarduntodon.com/FUDcast32. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a review if you want. This helps. Also on Google Play and Stitcher because Isaac wanted us there. So we are.
What is that? What's that?
It's another podcast thing. Like, I don't know. We should be on Luminary or something next. But you can also check us out on YouTube where we post these episodes as well as original content. YouTube.com/forwarduntodon because I was able to steal that name. But
I know what YouTube is.
I'm glad you do, Dani. Welcome to 2006. And our Twitter is ForwardDon because I cannot take that username. And, of course, check out our articles. Like I mentioned earlier, our newest one is Fall of Reach Retrospective for its 18th birthday. You can see that at forwarduntodon.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.